Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's week's going well. Not sure if you're keeping up with all the, pre-Super Bowl activities. I have not been. I'm in the Central Valley, close to the Bay Area. Grew up in the Bay Area, but I haven't had a chance to hit up San Francisco yet. Just with picking up the kids from school and taking them to school and that sort of thing. But it looks pretty cool. All the flag football stuff and meeting some of the players. It looks like it's a real good time for the kids. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on this week. It seems like, the media, all of their interest right now is Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza. So I'm sure, all the Raiders media teams are really busy with the same question over and over again, right? But it's kind of cool to be at the top of the news, for positive reasons. Don't have much to go over today, but we still do have, some things to talk about. So let's get started. Matt Nagy, OC, for KC, really good offensive coordinator. There were even talks of him, why isn't he a head coach at this point? I'm sure there's a reason. We talk about it all the time where some guys are meant to be coordinators, some guys are meant to be head coaches. Anyways, he's going to the Giants as a OC. That's a big win for the Giants. The Giants been making a lot of big moves. So and look out for that. And I love to see him leave KC. So that's okay. Go ahead, build up the Giants, get out of KC. It's fine. I don't want to see any more KC. So good for you, Nagy. Um, Besides that, more talks are starting to pick up with Jim Schwartz. That's the defensive coordinator for the Browns. Really good coach. Even if you're just a casual football fan, you might be familiar with Schwartz. He made that defense just a monster defense, and I know Max Crosby now chimed in. So it's more than smoke now. So I think Crosby was asked about his thoughts on Jim Schwartz, and basically he said that guy's a dog. So hey, yesterday we were kind of talking about um, Max Crosby. Hopefully, all these trade talks are not something that the Raiders are going to entertain. But hey, if we want to continue to keep Crosby happy and interested, you take in Jim Schwartz. Let's get him. I know he's still under contract with Cleveland, but pro sports, you can make everything happen, especially if he refuses to continue to be a coach for Cleveland, even though he's under contract. There's always things that you could work out. I know Miles Garrett's definitely not happy about Schwartz leaving. I know he posted something on Twitter or whatever it's called now, X, and it's just kind of a picture of a lonely person on a bench. Miles Garrett did have his best season, so he's definitely not happy about losing Schwartz. So hey Raiders, if you want to make Crosby and the defense happy, pick that guy up. Um, I'm sure a lot of you seen Gruden and Rich Gannon reunite yesterday, and coverage of everyone's in the Bay Area, right, for the media row for the Super Bowl. And then Gruden even visited the Oakland Coliseum and walked the field, and that was really cool. And it kind of brought me back to some great memories of our last real glory days, right? I mean, we've been to the playoffs a couple times since then, but man, for some of the younger Raider fans, where Derek Carr was the only consistent quarterback that we've had. Before that, the last really, really great quarterback was Rich Gannon. He was a Pro Bowler, MVP, took us to multiple championship games, helped us win, division titles. Um, Even though he only went to one Super Bowl, he should have. We should have been to three Super Bowls with Rich Gannon. Um, I spoke about this on Instagram. It was just kind of a bad memory when we were at the championship game at home against the Baltimore Ravens, one game away from the Super Bowl, right? and Gannon was just on fire. We didn't have much of a backup quarterback. I believe our backup was Billy Joe Holbert at that time. I could be wrong, but I'm just going off the top of the head. I believe that's who our backup quarterback was, and Rich Gannon was having a day. We were getting ready to win that game. Saragusa gets a sack on Gannon, knowing that if they take Gannon out, they could come back and win this game, and that's what happened. Saragusa sacks Rich Gannon and then flops on top of him, takes him out of the game, wrecks his shoulder. Um, the Baltimore Ravens go on to win that game and go to the Super Bowl to play not very good New York Giants team, and the rest is history. That's when Baltimore Ravens, became a thing. It was another, through um, screwing the Raiders out. They made a name for themselves, just like the Patriots and the Tuck Rule. And of course, the Tuck Rule hurts, a lot. However, that game wasn't. Um, there would if we won that game, there would still be another game that we would need to play to advance, to the Super Bowl. This game against Baltimore was at home. This game would determine who was going to the Super Bowl. So there's that game for sure. We'd go to the Super Bowl for sure. We'd beat the Giants, and then of course, the Tuck Rule. I believe that we would have beat the next team. I think it would be Pittsburgh if we were to beat the Patriots. That's the team we would have to beat that year to advance to the Super Bowl. That's two Super Bowls. And then the year that we finally went to the Super Bowl, Gruden was already fired, um, and coaching for the team that played us in the Super Bowl, right? Now, if the Tuck Rule never happened, I don't think Gruden would not fired, traded actually. That was strange too. I don't think Gruden would have ever been traded. And that's three games that I've mentioned, or 3 years where the Raiders should have went to the Super Bowl, and I think we could have won all three of them. The Super Bowl we lost, I mean, it wasn't really a surprise when we lost because Gruden knew our whole playbook. So, most of you know that story. He knew our playbook, but if none of that prior to Gruden being traded ever happened, I think that's three more Super Bowls that the Raiders would have had. And then if we would have won three Super Bowls, we probably would have kept this team together and possibly did more. But um, it's a shame. It's hard to be a Raiders fan, but never forget, before Carr, there was Gannon, and Gannon's the man, to me. I mean, especially, I'm, kind of a younger generation of Raider fans. I'm about to be 43, and those years were my best years of watching the Raiders. I know my dad used to always tell me about the great days, when we were winning Super Bowls in the past, but you know, I I didn't live through that. So I did through the '83 Super Bowl, Marcus Allen, but I was very very young, so not old enough to appreciate that Super Bowl. But that really, I just wanted to mention that because that really brought back a lot of memories, seeing Rich Gannon and John Gruden together, and they were dominant teams. Those were dominant teams. Teams were scared to play us. um, you had a newly selected um, a Hall of Famer. We had Allen, right, and we had Woodson. We had both Woodsons. We were just stacked. Charlie Garner and Tyrone Wheatley. We had Tim Brown and Jerry Rice on the same team, and even though they were older, they're still good. It wasn't their prime years, but man, they balled out together. If you know little about the Gruden and Gannon days, I'd suggest go on YouTube and watch those games. Um, and you'll see how good these guys were. I think those are teams that we should never forget. Um, again, besides that, there's not a whole lot to go over. But I did think that, Jim Schwartz's DC was, something worthy to talk about because he's going to end up somewhere. I don't think that he's going to stay with Cleveland. They can't get a hold of him. Um, so also, I had a great comment from one of my Raider Nation friends here, on YouTube, Savvy SAVVY 1803 N7D. So he had a great comment, and I just wanted to read it off, before we get off. Um, Building your channel with factual content is the only way to go. Too many started out this way only to revert to clickbait, half truth headlines in hopes of getting their subs, and they never have anything of substance to offer because of it. Some say, why can't the Raiders ever have anything nice? Then are quickly to want to trade another generational talent like Max, forgetting all the while how the Mac trade turned out. Max needs to stay a Raider for life. Unless he asks to go. I agree there. Two entirely different things. Cousins is an interesting idea, but the elephant in the room remains Geno. And don't expect a new free agent QB to come until that gets resolved. And finally, keep an eye on Rashid Shaheed from Seattle. Excellent as a kick and punt returner, and certainly can take the top off a Raider defense. Take the top off a defense. Not a true wide receiver one at this point, but I believe he is a free agent at the season end and has a habit of following Kubiak around. Have a great day. Thank you, Savvy 1803-N7D. I really appreciate your comments. Always great takes and something good to say. Valuable information. And with that, peace out, Raider Nation. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Let me know in the comments, if you have anything to say. Please like, subscribe. Even right now, it's a little bit slower. Even if it's just reminiscing on great Raider teams, even before the era that I was talking about, like the early 2000s, Gannon and Gruden, we still have the LA Raiders. We have the Raiders coming back to Oakland. I was at that game when we came back to Oakland against the Chargers. It was wild. But even if we just want to reminisce and talk about old memories, whatever it is, get in the comments. Let's engage. But Raider Nation, peace out. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.